Ugh, I wish I owned a car. It'd make weekend day trips, seeing the fam, and last-minute errands so much easier.
You don't need to own a car for that.
Really?
Check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone 24/7. It's super affordable because you only pay for the time you need, plus gas and maintenance are included.
Yeah, but bet it costs more in the long run.
Nope. Members save hundreds a month compared to car owners.
Okay, I'm checking them out.
Use the Zipcar app to book a car near you in minutes for a few hours or a weekend. Join instantly at zipcar.com. Zipcar. You don't need to own a car to have one.
There's never been a better time for football fans to join the huddle with BetMGM. Sign up today and place a $10 pregame wager on any pro football team to win. If any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game, you'll win $200 in free bets regardless of your wager's outcome. Just use bonus code JERSEY200 when you make your first bet. Get on the field and find out why nothing beats a win with the king of sportsbooks. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use bonus code JERSEY200 to win $200 in free bets if any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The TV is on, your friends are ready, and now it's time to get the food. Grubhub is here with your order. Don't just plan for a successful Sunday night watch party. With Grubhub, you can plan for the whole football season because Amazon Prime members get a year of Grubhub Plus for free. That means paying $0 on your deliveries from your favorite restaurants. Go all the way to the end zone with Grubhub. Download the Grubhub app today or visit goforgrubhub.com/Amazon to know more about our Amazon Prime deal. Terms apply.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Greetings. This is an extremely special episode, and for a multitude of reasons, but for the first one being that I have an unbelievable guest, and that guest is Steve Von Till. He plays in a band called Neurosis. He also just recently released an incredible solo record called No Wilderness Deep Enough. I highly, highly encourage you to check it out. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. And he actually just recently released his own collection of poems and lyrics called Harvest Man, 23 untitled poems and collected lyrics. You can get all that stuff on his website, which is just vontil.org. But on top of that, this show is celebrating its 8-year anniversary. And actually, if I look back to the first episode that I posted of this particular podcast, which was called First World Problems, which shout out to my good friends Joey Cahill and Scott Arnold for walking along that journey. I posted that in September of 2010. So that means I've been podcasting for close to 10 years. And it's a lot to like kind of, look back at all the people I've had on the show and all the support that I've been given, not only from you, the listener, but advertisers and everybody that has, believed in this thing or consumed in this thing. I just, words don't really do it justice. Like, this has been able to give me so many different amazing things in my life that I never would have had if I didn't start, picking up a microphone and talking to people. And it's, I'm don't know, humbled, whatever. I don't want to use stupid cliches, but I'm really, really appreciative of it. And thank you. If you are listening, if this is your very first episode, that's fine. If this is your 150th, that's even better. If this is your 400th, that's crazy, but I appreciate you listening. So please raise a glass to a toast to independent music, because that is what puts us here. That is what keeps us coming back. The DIY culture, punk, hardcore, all that stuff is just in our souls, in our DNA. And we contribute to it. And this is the only way that I know how to. I mean, I played in bands and did all that other stuff, but this is what keeps the flame alive, so to speak. So thank you very much as the consumer and listener of these interviews and these discussions. I really, really do appreciate it. And the fact that I could have someone like Steve Von Till on the show just, speaks to how far the show has come. So I'm just going to dive right in. But first, you should email the show 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. And if your friends don't know about the show, tell them, please, because that is the best way to spread this particular show around. It's the word of mouth. It's not podcast charts, or it's not social media promo. Like, all of that stuff is cool and dandy, but when you are telling a friend that needs to listen to something, they will probably listen to you. So please do that. And I hope you are all being safe. Like, the world is just, every day it's like a new set of terrors. And I just try to, put my head down, get through it the best that I can, and hold on to the ones that I love. That's all that any of us can do. So I hope that is what you are doing. So here is Steve. And like I said, please check out his solo record. Please check out his collection of poems and lyrics. It's just, he's an incredibly thoughtful person. And I was really, 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 really excited to have him on. So here we go. 8 years. Here's Steve Montill.
Indulge me for a moment as I, experience or tell you about an experience that I think you will not only understand, but has probably been expressed to you in many different capacities in regards to your music, focused on Neurosis, where, as a teen, like, whatever, I'm 39 years old. So, like, I started to get into, like, punk and hardcore, whatever, 14, 15. And, people showed me Neurosis, and I was like, okay, like, I get it, but I don't get it. And then I remember it was like, I think my junior year of high school, where, like, I stayed home sick from school one day, and I put in Times of Grace, and all of a sudden it felt like the clouds lifted. Like, I'd listened to the record before, but it just, all of a sudden, it all kind of, like, hit at that particular moment, and, like, the clouds parted, and, angels sang or whatever. But all of your music has that undercurrent of, like, patience mixed with, like, layers of intricacies. Where it's like, you have to balance the idea of being approachable and yet substantial. I'm going to guess my experience is not too dissimilar to many other people who have expressed, like, oh yeah, maybe I didn't get Neurosis or, your solo music at one point, but then all of a sudden it just kind of, like, washed over me. Is that accurate at all?
I would imagine so. I mean, I have similar experiences with the music I like. I mean, first time I heard, like, I don't know, Joy Division or Black Flag, for example, I probably didn't get it. I wasn't ready for it until I was in an emotional state or a level of maturity or just the right moment of life. Not that Black Flag necessarily requires maturity, but sure. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't open to it, until the right moment. And so, I mean, we don't create this music to be liked or enjoyed. So the fact that anybody actually enjoys or finds, relates to our strange, often listener unfriendly self-expression is kind of amazing to me sometimes. I mean, we're in many times, in fact, like if we've ever considered the audience ever in creation, it's usually with some sort of disregard.
Sure.
Like like, oh, that will definitely.
Let's see how we can try their patience. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Here's this 15-minute long song. Let's see if we can make him leave it at minute 8 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Evil laughter.
Right.
So, yeah. but most of the time, yeah, it's not easy listening. It's not friendly listening. It's not party music. It's not stuff you jam in the car with your friends on your, way to the liquor store or whatever. It is, like you said, maybe it's a moment where you were feeling low, alone, away from the day to day, and you needed something deeper and darker and heavier at that moment, and that's kind of always been the role I think that our music has played for others. I mean, for us, it's the always been that drive of this is what we have to make. We felt emotionally and in a way spiritually compelled to do it, to pull it from the ether or wherever the hell it comes from and translate it into this strange rock music.
Right. Well, the notion that, there are very there are bands that you can, and artists that you can reflect on that would be creating the thing that they're creating regardless of the audience. And, you guys definitely typify that, where it's like you would be doing this if there was, 4 people paying attention to it. Like that, just because that's part of your, core DNA, that like you would be creating some version of what you were doing.
Yeah, for sure. And there have been days where there were four people.
Right. And this is also, forgive my, specificity in this question, but this was also a formative experience for me personally in regards to, you guys playing Ozfest. I did not attend that Ozfest, but obviously they put out that VHS tape where they had a song from each band. And like, that was just so foundational, I know, for many people that I've spoken to. And I found you guys being so interesting, not only playing Ozfest with like, Earth Crisis and, I, as a straight edge hardcore kid, like, watching a band like Earth Crisis play in front of a Jägermeister banner was really funny too. But I just remember when your footage came on, it was, again, the clouds hadn't parted for me with your music as of yet, but I just was so compelled, playing Locust Star, and then the idea that your footage was in black and white, whereas no one else's was. I have to ask, was that a like deliberate choice on your guys' end, or was that just something that the compilation producer of that VHS did just because they felt like they needed to differentiate you guys in some way?
I can't recall the specifics, but for us to play in the daytime was completely unheard of.
Right.
At that time, because part of our deal was our psychedelic projections, which nowadays is a given that any big concert production is going to have video content and blah, blah, blah. But back then, nobody had it. Maybe the Butthole Surfers had it, but because you had to do it with slide projectors and film, there wasn't high quality video projectors back then. It was super old school analog. So it was a huge compromise for us to perform in the first place, 1, in the daytime, and 2, without any way to represent the visual aspect of what we were doing. We were doing, in a sense, multimedia before that was the thing that everybody does. And so I think that Sharon Osbourne might have offered to have it treated as that way in order to give it a look that represented our vibe more. So it was
right.
It was definitely it wasn't a demand on our part. It was definitely a respectful gesture from their part, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. No, it makes sense because it definitely it's you guys stood out clearly because you did not a square peg round hole scenario, but just the fact that whatever a person who was a fan of Static X or whatever other band that was playing on there had to reckon with the fact that, wait, what is this footage in black and white? Like what's this band? And yeah, I remember it being really impactful that like you couldn't kind of turn away because it was this deeply different tone than the rest of it.
Yeah, what a strange thing. I mean, some Ozfest VHS.
I know. And it's like, some 25 years later, I can still close my eyes and remember that, watching it with my friends and be like, dude, what is this band? It feels like they're summoning, Satan. Because it just like, I don't know. It was so impactful. But I'm glad that you have some recollection of that. Kind of putting the focus on, you as a person, that clearly you've been interviewed 5 million times, so I won't try to hit on many of the same notes that people have. But, I know you were born and raised in Northern California, but I didn't know if it was Oakland in particular, or was there, another area?
No,
okay.
I was South Bay. I was from San Jose, so I was an hour south.
Got it. Which, it's probably changed over the years.
Shit. Yeah, I mean, where I live now is so different, but it was the South Bay when I was born in 69. So when I was a little kid, Silicon Valley hadn't happened yet, and a lot of the South Bay, like if you were on the southwestern side of the 101, it was a lot of agriculture still. A lot of flower farms, apricot farms, almonds. trees and a lot of open space. And as IBM, Apple, all the other tech companies that have, came and went during that time blossomed, the South Bay definitely changed radically. All the open fields where my friends and I would go ride our bikes or play or whatever and are now overrun with condos. The population explosion was crazy. But I definitely enjoy. I mean, it was an interesting place to be because you're in shooting distance of San Francisco or Oakland or Berkeley without having to live there. You could get to the beach in a half an hour in Santa Cruz, or you've got the mountains just on the other side of us that you could go mess around in. So I thought it was a good place to grow up. And of course, as soon as I became an adult, I got the hell out of there and went to San Francisco and lived in the Mission District for 7 years until I made my escape plan from the metropolis entirely.
Sure. Right. And I think your description of that experience, I think is so reflective of, kind of California at large, because, like you said, you're a half an hour from the mountains, you're a half an hour from the beach, like you're within spitting distance to all these different, experiences that sometimes people that get raised in different areas only have one. They're like, oh yeah, I'm in the desert or I'm in the mountains and I have to drive hours in order to get the thing, something different.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that experience kind of, gives you the ability to understand what it is you actually like about, climate and location, where you're like, oh, I actually like the mountains more than I like the beach or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so what was your family structure like growing up? Like, a mom and dad in the house, brother and sister? What was that?
Standard nuclear family. Yeah. Mom, dad, younger sister, baseball.
Sure. Yeah. Apple pie, white picket fence, all that.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents were both, my dad was born on the East Coast, and my mother was born in the Midwest, and they met in college in the Midwest. And so they kind of continued the westward migration until they hit the ocean, and they moved out to California right before I was born. My dad was last of 8 kids. My grandparents were born in 1900.
Wow.
It was pretty cool because we would go visit family. Nobody was local. We'd have to go to Iowa, to Michigan, to New Jersey. My father's parents were from Brooklyn, New York, and were both the first generation children of immigrants. And so there was definitely a lot of that kind of upward mobility going on, like doing the best you can, but you got to work hard and do it for yourself. So as my father, he's an attorney, finally about to retire. We moved from a, small, tiny apartment, in the middle of town to a small house and then to a big house up in the foothills and did that whole kind of thing.
Nice. And was your mom staying home basically raising you and your sister?
Until we got to high school, and she was college educated, then she kind of went back into it. And then she just retired last month as a university professor at San Jose State University, where she had been since the early 90s.
Very cool. And what sort of law did your dad practice? A little of everything?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. I know, because sometimes it's funny when I have these conversations with people. Sometimes you kind of reflect where it's like, well, I know at one point they did this thing, but like they didn't. Sometimes you just don't talk about like the intricacies of your job besides like, oh yes, this general description. So you're like, I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, as you were kind of growing up and, finding your identity and like you said, kind of within a sort of suburban, yet also the fact that you could go out and roam the, hills with your friends and, BMX and all that other stuff. What sort of kid did you find yourself being? Were you, outgoing, reserved? Were you, kind of a sports dude? Where did you find yourself?
Eventually in punk rock, but
of course,
yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Super shy. I was a super shy kid. If a teacher was calling on people, if they looked my direction, I would die inside a little bit. I did not want to get called on. I did not want to talk in front of people. Which may seem ironic in the end, but I am still very much that person. And I loved sports. I loved baseball and basketball. Played baseball in Little League. My dad was our coach, our Little League coach. And I enjoyed hanging with my friends and my teammates. I did have close friends. We had a kind of a neighborhood group of kids that was pretty tight. And, we would all mess around and get into trouble, and not much trouble. We were pretty good kids.
Sure.
But yeah, riding bikes, playing baseball.
That's cool. I love that. I love that experience of what you're talking about when you find, that neighborhood group of kids, whether it's, even if it's just one or two people, but like that experience of palling around, being like, all right, we'll meet at the park at, 10 after we have breakfast or whatever. And then what are we going to do that day? And then you just kind of figure it out. Exactly.
Yeah. Bounce back and forth between each other's houses, or, tell each other's parents you're going to the other person's house so you don't have to be home at any time.
Right.
But rock and roll hit pretty early. Both my parents listened to a lot of music. My dad was more into like Kingston Trio, John Denver, Jim Croce, folk singer type stuff. He had a band in high school of that style.
Oh, nice.
And my mom listened to more like current kind of it wasn't classic rock yet.
Right, it was rock. Right?
Rock radio, KSJO, KOME, Queen, Journey, Foreigner, that kind of stuff, which was all right at the time, but I was always looking for something heavier, and it was the time of the like cutout LPs where they'd clip the corner off the sleeve, and you could pick it up for $2 or whatever, and that's where I saw my first Kiss record. And as much as I just can't justify most of their music to this day. I know some people can. I know Buzz from the Melvins will never give up on Kiss.
Yeah, never. Right?
And I'll listen to him play Kiss.
Sure,
but most of it, past the first early days, there's not a whole lot of redeeming musical quality, but it did completely capture my imagination. And me and those kids in the neighborhood, man, we would fucking air guitar Kiss concerts where we each picked our person and, imitated who you were going to be. Or were you going to get on the second bunk of the bunk bed and be Peter Criss on the drum riser, or,
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that was kind of the gateway. And then, but a lot of my friends, like I remember even in fourth grade, which happens to be the grade I teach, certain parents would drive us to the radio station so we could buy the stickers and buy the buttons. And I remember there was a DJ, I don't remember which of the two South Bay stations it was, but his name was Dennis Erectus. And
so good.
And he had Dennis Erectus for President buttons. And so in fourth grade, I would have been wearing my Dennis Erectus for President button on my down vest. I
love that.
And we were just totally into it. We'd cut up the KOME stickers because you could change the letters to say whatever you want. So we were obsessed with AC/DC, Ted Nugent, Kiss, Led Zeppelin. That was basically the wheelhouse right there. I didn't actually like Led Zeppelin until quite later in life, but AC/DC, Ted Nugent, Kiss, that was it until I discovered anything that the radio wasn't playing.
Right, yeah.
So we listened to that a lot. And we, in 1979, I saw a fucking TV commercial for Kiss playing live at the Cow Palace. And I ran into that, Mom, I've got to go. And we got tickets, and the other moms in the neighborhood got tickets. And so maybe 3 moms and all the boys from the neighborhood, we all fucking went to that Kiss concert at the Cow Palace in 1979.
Dude, what a night. Like, that sounds so rad just to be able to be like, all right, I'm with my friends, like, Mom's endorsing this. We get to see, Pyro and all the dudes we've been imitating forever.
Oh, yeah. Pyro, blood, flying. Yeah. Emerging out of the floor,
Right.
magically.
Yeah.
And it was freaking incredible.
Yeah.
And it just kind of blossomed from there. From there, I was pretty much hooked. Then I discovered I'd still enjoyed playing sports, but I was no longer. I never felt I never felt a member of the jock society, I suppose.
Sure.
I would be more into it. Probably about that same period of time where I discovered reading for pleasure. I had one of those same kids in the neighborhood, man. In fact, I have the book sitting right here in front of me because I read it to my class every year. Tolkien's The Hobbit.
Oh,
I probably discovered in about 5th grade as well, and it still has my friend John's name in it written from back then when we were little. You could tell because his name is all fucked up. And actually, I don't think he knows I have it. I borrowed it back then and never gave it. So it's like the longest borrow. It's missing the sleeve now. It's finally come out of the binding. It's falling apart. But I'm going to give it back. I'm going to give it back to him in 13 years when I retire, and I can say that I read it for 33 years to kids. Now he can have it back.
Right. You're like, I think we got good use out of this.
Yeah, I've read this out loud 33 times. You can have it now.
Dude, that's incredible. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you kind of start to unlock things on your own where you feel like you have some agency, whether it's the music you listen to, the books that you read, and because obviously when you're in elementary school, you don't have any choice. It's not like you're like, oh, I think I'm going to do this today. I mean, yes, of course you can choose to do what you're going to do with your friends, but you don't really have any other things beyond what your parents are presenting to you. So you can be like, oh yes, like I'm going to be reading this, I'm going to be listening to this band. So you just feel like you got that control.
Yeah, for sure. Making independent decisions. And I remember once my parents knew I was into music, pretty early on, I always had a little shitty turntable with the built-in speaker, but about that same time, I got a nice tabletop cassette deck, a proper receiver, some decent speakers, and I would tape songs off the radio that I liked and make tapes, and then I think I was probably about 9 when my dad bought me my first guitar for Christmas. It was a big hollow body Mosrite. It didn't look heavy metal enough for me, so I was a little disappointed.
You're a little bear.
Yeah. But man, I wish I still had that guitar. What an idiot. I was. Right. I traded it for something pointy. But I didn't take it seriously yet. I just kind of messed around a little bit,
Sure.
Tried
just
to
got like wet the whistle, so to speak.
Yeah, a few chords here and there, and whatnot. And I did. So I was simultaneously getting into lots of different types of music. I can't remember the first time I really heard heavy metal, but it was probably Iron Maiden. Mm-hmm. They were the gateway drug.
Right. To the stuff that what you were saying earlier, to the stuff that obviously wasn't just presented to you on the radio.
Right. It might have been. There was a lot of things happening then simultaneously. There was MTV, it was just starting, and they didn't have a whole lot of content. And so they played whatever, whatever they could get. And I think Iron Maiden knew this. And there was an Iron Maiden live, but with their first singer, Paul Di'Anno, like in 81, around when the Killers album came out or so. So I would have been just turning 12. I think they broadcast the whole concert multiple times, and then videos from it then. And so it was like Rothschild and Prowler and all these great heavy songs. And instantly I was captured, and I went and I found the album. And then when I saw the album cover and I saw Eddie, I was just like, oh yeah, that's
what I'm going for.
Yeah, that's mine. There it is.
I just like that notion too of, your parents being permissive to indulge your passions, because that, especially once, and I'm sure you see this a lot of the times with your students and with many of maybe your peers and their children, where the moment that a kid brings something into the house that is a foreign object, so to speak, they don't know what to do with it, and sometimes they get scared and they're like, well, I don't know, we need to keep a watchful eye over that. But it sounds like your parents were, generally speaking, pretty permissive with that. Absolutely, yeah. Thank God they weren't conservative Christians. Right. Totally. Because I had those friends later on, whose parents were all up in their ass about stuff, and really prevented them from doing stuff that, if they would have been more open-minded, was really freaking cool, creative, productive, and as we would learn later on in DIY punk rock, more entrepreneurial, more it wasn't whatever their assumptions were. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love too, and I'm sure you had this experience when you started to like book shows, play in bands, and put together 7 inches demo tapes and stuff. You don't actually, you're not vocalizing learning business experience or learning life experience, but when you show your parents or your family asks about those things that you're doing, they're kind of like, wait, what do you mean you booked a show in Oregon? Like what are you talking? And it's like, and you're developing all these skills that you use, I'm sure to this day, that, to your point, if a parent stops that, they won't have that, even if it's a, maybe fruitless endeavor in regards to, playing a show in Portland in front of 4 people or whatever, it's still learning skills. Absolutely. Yeah. No, my parents were always supportive. Once they realized that's where it was going. And as long as I wasn't a fuck up, I never got busted, not that I wasn't around or near things that were going on, or even perhaps part of it. I never got caught. So, they found out about the gigs that happened at their house years after the fact. Once I was grown up and out of the house, the neighbor who talked the cops out of busting us a few times, when we would charge $5 for 3 bands and 2 kegs. That's incredible. Yeah. You're like, hey, just letting you guys know, about 5 years ago, we put on about 5 or 6 shows at the house. Yeah. And there was one where, I might be skipping ahead too far here, but no, it's fine. There was one where they had kind of an arched leaded glass window in their great room in the front. And during that particular party, some shit got out of hand a little bit, and some of that got broken out. So like several panels of the front window got broken out. I'd had an argument with the singer of my first band, kind of a thrashy kind of DRI meets the more metal thrash kind of thing going on at the time, and our drummer at the time was imitating the fight with a beer can in his hand and pretended to punch, and landed straight on my tooth with the beer can and knocked a tooth out. Oh, and before my parents got home 2 days later, I had the window replaced and my tooth replaced. So, dude, that is really good, Steve. I mean, I felt pretty good about that. I mean, that took some serious organization and like figuring out my resources. Like, who do I know? Right. Yeah. Who do I know? A glass guy? Do I know a tooth guy? Right. Yeah. So and so from Little League, his dad owns the glass company, Fontaine Glass on Allen Rock Avenue. Calling him up, get that done, and I know where the dentist is, so I'm just going to drive over there. Dude, I love that. Yeah, it's all about the hustle and kind of like, well, I in order for me to keep doing this, I need to keep this secret. I got to keep this covered up still. Problem solving. I use it every day. Band merch is my life. And band merch is something that you need to go and find
on rockabilia.com. Obviously, it's one of our favorite supporters of this show, and they've supported this show for the past 2 or 3 years, and it's awesome. I love to have them along for the ride because, for one, they give you a discount code, PC100 words, that gets you 15% off your order. And secondly, they have all authentic, high-quality band merch from so many bands you can't even begin to reach the bottom of your searches on there. They have over 500,000 items. That's 500,000 items, from sweatshirts, scarves, beanies, or they call them in Canada toques. They've got so much stuff, and it's all an independently owned and run business. I think that's a better way of saying it. But it feels so good to support them because they're doing the Lord's work of getting band merch out to everybody that needs them, and then in turn getting the bands paid for their legitimate non-bootleg merch. I love it. I love Rockabilia so much. So again, PC100 words. That is the code you should use to support the show, support yourself, and support Rockabilia. Band merch. It's just the best, right? I mean, I've got probably over 400 band shirts myself. So contribute to the cause. Buy some band merch from Rockabilia. PC100 words, 15% off.
Man, I wish I owned a car.
Why?
Day trips on the weekend, seeing the fam, hitting up the vintage markets, last-minute errands.
Oh, you don't need to own a car for that.
What you mean?
You don't need to own a car to have one.
Okay.
Yeah, just check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone. It's super affordable. Gas and maintenance are included in your membership, and you only pay for the time you drive. Nothing else.
Wait, really?
Yep, and you can book by the hour or day.
Bet it costs more in the long run, though.
Nah, members actually save about $700 a month compared to car owners.
$700 a month? Wait, so this isn't your car?
Nope. I use the Zipcar app to book one for a few hours or a weekend. It's super convenient.
Join instantly at zipcar.com and book a car near you in minutes. That's zipcar.com. Zipcar. Have a car without owning one in the city.
There's never been a better time for football fans to join the huddle with BetMGM. Sign up today and place a $10 pregame wager on any pro football team to win. If any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game, you'll win $200 in free bets regardless of your wager's outcome. Just use bonus code JERSEY200 when you make your first bet. Get on the field and find out why nothing beats a win with the king of sportsbooks. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use bonus code JERSEY200 to win $200 in free bets if any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Check out the podcast Good Assassins, the unbelievable but true story of the greatest spy of World War II. Season 1 was a top 10 hit with millions of listeners, making it one of the top 20 new podcasts of the year. In Season 2, a mysterious agent is strategically dismantling the Nazis' violent grasp on France. They don't know her name, but they want this woman dead. Not only is she leading her own resistance factions, but inspiring others. The Gestapo sends a devious double agent to hunt down the limping lady before she threatens their entire push for Western Europe. But Virginia Hall was tougher and more resilient than anyone expected. I'm Stephen Talty, an author and a journalist, and from Diversion Audio, this is the dramatic story of a different kind of spy. Listen to Good Assassins on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
And so did you, I guess, care about school? Were you kind of, applying yourself, getting, B's and A's, or were you kind of just I'm on cruise control, I don't really care about this?
Kind of between the two. Luckily for me, most of it came naturally. And so I could pretty much cruise control my way into decent grades. Once I got into high school and it got a bit tougher, my parents had to get used to the fact that there might be a couple C's in there if I didn't give a crap, But if the class was interesting, I was totally, if the teacher and the class were engaging, I was all about it. Last year I had emailed my high school English teacher. I will say my parents did. Our neighborhood in San Jose was a couple of blocks up off the east side, And it was a decent, nice neighborhood, and I loved all the kids I went to elementary school with. We didn't know things were different, 10 blocks over in the barrio, But it was a really big high school, and there was a lot of gang stuff going on between cowboys and cholos, and a bunch of stuff that my parents were like, now that they were doing well and earning money, they were willing to get me across town into a private high school to get a better education and not have to deal with that kind of stuff, which I am also thankful for, because it was small classes. You got to know your teachers, and my parents were atheists and not religious at all, but it was a Catholic high school.
Got it.
Which basically meant you had to go to some one BS class.
Right.
Once a year.
Intro to religion.
Yeah. In which I did happen to wear my Black Sabbath hat and my upside down cross just because I wanted to be that guy.
Of course. What's that in your shirt, Steve? And you're like, nothing.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. They didn't send me home from that, but they sent me home when I started cutting the sleeves off my T-shirts. That was unacceptable.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No one can see your upper arm.
Can wear a Sex Pistols T-shirt, but you can't cut the sleeves off. This teacher, my high school English teacher, he had sat down with, there was only a couple of us that were into it. There was a couple of us that were kind of metalheads and a couple others that were punks and a goth or two, right? And we all kind of glommed together just into a very small group, like the Freaks.
Sure.
And started sharing all of our music, which was awesome because it was also happening around us. It was the beginnings of that Bay Area thrash scene happening where punk and metal were naturally merging. You had the DIY punk scene was blossoming. The whole Gilman thing hadn't happened yet, but it was the precursors, lots of people putting on shows everywhere. So that this teacher, he sat down with us and he told us about how he loved the Damned and Sex Pistols and how he traveled to England and hung out with the Damned and just all this great stuff, how he recorded his own music in his own home studio. And I was like, what? You do what?
What? Yeah, wow. That's an amazing thing for a teacher to sit down and be like, hey guys, I may not like the same stuff, but like here's some foundational things.
Right. And that blew my mind. And I wrote to him telling him how, one, appreciative I was that he was not only accepting but supportive of the Freaks, because we were also the ones reading the books and really into it,
Right.
It's contrary to what people would have thought. We were the ones that were into the concepts he was talking about. And he lent me his reel-to-reel 4-track so that I could learn how to record our band. And
wow.
Yeah. I'm sitting here talking to you in a home studio right now. It's gotten a little more out of control than a 4-track, but I wouldn't be sitting in a room full of music gear and home recording devices if that hadn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And there were some other teachers that were great. We had me and one of the guys from my band, our high school physics teacher, let us walk on hot coals for our physics project, and
I love that.
Public school would have never done that. And
no.
And so he wouldn't let us do it on school property for obvious reasons. But
sure.
But we filmed it with a Voivod soundtrack, and yeah, so that was, and he was supportive of us starting a fanzine, all of those things that we wanted to do. I just felt like I found a few adults who, they weren't necessarily like gurus or anything, but they just acknowledged it in a supportive manner,
They got where you were coming from.
Right.
They're like, I like the fact, because I'm sure you can attest to this, when you identify in a kid something that they're passionate about, that is something that, maybe hasn't been passed down by their parents, like you feel like it's their own thing and they're taking ownership of it. If even if it's like, oh, I'm really into Minecraft, you're like, that's great. Like, just dive into that, because you are passionate about it, and that's exciting. For sure.
So the fact that we were validated by an adult, was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool.
And there were several others at that school that did the same thing. You know, I could take my electric guitar every day, and the music teacher, even though I wasn't part of band, would let me go use the amp in one of the practice rooms, and, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I love the description of that experience, and I also like the idea too of you being able to learn from all of these different sources of musical touchstones, because, you know, I mean, clearly it's like, you know, the journey that you've had musically has gone, you know, all over the place. I mean, you know, always under the guise of something that is, you know, layered and dark and, you know, has a lot of texture. But the fact that you would be able to pull all of these disparate influences together to create, you know, the headspace in which you are able to lean into it, as opposed to, you know, just being a punk band and never looking up from that.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, you're like, well, you said it, not me.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I think that I just really am passionate about that notion of when you are, you know, learning from your peers in regards to that, where it's like, oh, you know, someone may turn up their nose at, you know, whatever Joy Division or Throbbing Gristle until it's presented in the right light to you, and you're like, oh, okay, like this is as cool as Slayer or whatever, you know, like you need those people to contextualize stuff for you. Otherwise, you know, you just think it's this dumb thing over there.
For sure. I mean, you know, like I still remember before, like when that first Metallica record come out, I wasn't old enough to be part of that scene yet. I was only 13, you know, turning 14 in 1983. And I remember being in the Tower Records, flipping through the heavy metal section, the imports. You know, I'm looking at things at the cover and trying to judge, like,
yeah, is this good? Right.
You know, I had already discovered Motorhead because thanks to that. So not only did MTV kind of open up that Iron Maiden gateway, but there was a thing on TV. I don't have my timeline right. But there was a thing called Night Flight.
Okay.
And they played avant-garde art films, like weird ones, like David Lynch, all kinds of strange European stuff. They also played new wave theater,
okay,
which was a kind of public television punk rock show from LA. And they showed weird videos. So I hadn't quite latched onto punk rock until I got to high school, you know, and met the people that played me the records. But I remember that's where I probably first saw X or the Dead Kennedys or, you know, all these different bands where it was planting that seed, like, oh, okay, there's something weird and compelling out there beyond this kind of bloated arena rock shit I'm been grown up on, you know?
Yeah.
And, so kind of simultaneously, like I remember some kind of biker looking guy, he was probably just a heavy metal guy older than me and wasn't a biker, but in my mind, he was like a crazy looking biker guy who looked over me at that Tower Record store and handed me Kill 'Em All and goes, "You need this."
I love that.
You know, it's like a moment out of freaking High Fidelity or something, you know?
Totally.
And I didn't question him, man. I'm like, Hammer, Blood, Kill 'Em All, Metallica,
sign me up.
Turn it over, Flying V's, long hair.
Right.
I'm in.
That's my checklist.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm listening.
and so I'd already had Motorhead because I think because of that Night Flight show. They had played some Motorhead videos, and also I think they did some episodes of the Young Ones as well, which was
that would make sense.
Heavy on the Ace of Spades. And so it was starting to take shape, and so kind of taking those suggestions, being in those right places at the right time, then getting to high school and cross-pollinating, you know, friends who are listening to The Cure versus ones that are listening to the Bay Area thrash happening right at the moment. You know, they didn't even have albums out. We'd have to drive up to Record Vault in San Francisco and buy bands' demo tapes. Mm-hmm. With the punk of the day, you know, and the skate scene too, there's a lot of crossover with Thrasher magazine and the skate shops, all listening to Adolescence and Fear and all this different stuff. And everything just kind of grew from there. I like certain moments stick out, like that Kill 'Em All moment, the Motorhead moment. I went and visited an old friend who we were friends when we were little kids. Before the neighborhood I lived in, I was describing earlier, and we hadn't seen each other in a long time. And this kid pulls out Ex Los Angeles, and we sit down and fucking listen to the whole thing, and I'm completely blown away. That's opening my mind, a little more off the rock thing, and just all, and then then there was the Discharge moment where I'm kind of listening to the punk my friends are listening to. I haven't 100% bought in yet. I didn't know I wanted to make it. I was is still pretty heavy into Venom and Motorhead and Metallica, and on top of the older stuff. And then Discharge freaking blew the doors open.
Just crushed you.
Oh, yeah, because it had freaking huge guitars. Those are even bigger,
Right.
like that these aren't the crappy little, like at the time I probably would have been like, I don't want to listen to the Clash. Their guitars sound wimpy.
Right.
It was like,
sounds real tinny.
Yeah. Now
right.
it's one of my favorite things to listen to, but back then I wanted big distorted fucking stacks, and like Discharge sounded like the sun was an amplifier freaking smashing everything in its path like a nuclear bomb. And that's what the cover said, and that's what the cover looked like, and that these like 4-line lyrics of death and destruction, and just the black and white stark imagery, and that crystallized it for me. That's like, okay, this is where I'm going. I've got to do art like this. That's like kind of emotionally all encompassing and powerful, and it took a while to get there, but
that's what started you on the path
for sure.
What was there any kind of assumption that you were going to I guess follow in your father's footsteps as far as your career path and college and all that other stuff, or did you? I mean, clearly music was overtaking you at that point, but did you kind of have here's what I'm going to do for a career perspective?
Not at all. I had no direction with regards to career at all.
Got it. Did you go to college?
I did, and the only reason I did is because that's what our family did.
Yeah, it was what's expected.
Right, that was expected. And so my first degree was in sociology, and I didn't plan on using that for anything. Once I was done, I was just back on tour.
Right. Yeah, you're like, great, now I got a piece of paper that says I'm smart.
Okay,
yeah.
Did it.
Right.
And the reason why I chose sociology was because I was getting interested in philosophy and Jungian psychology and strange stuff like that, but also just heavily into political movements and all the stuff of the day, and which is resonating heavy again right now around us. But I just wanted to read about the Black Panthers and about the American Indian movement and about the SDS and about the 60s and all the social movements and the revolutions and people wanting to change stuff and all the trippy stuff, the Jungian psychology and archetypes and scream therapy like that. I just wanted to collage all that stuff, and sociology degree was where I could do it.
Right. You could explore all of those, quote unquote eccentricities that, would be kind of shuffled off to the side if you were to pursue, another version of that degree.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't until years later where I actually, quote, fell back, end quote, on my college degree.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's the fallback plan, right?
Yep.
You get a piece of paper that says you're allowed to do the thing. And something, I'm not going to, belabor, all of the, highs and lows of, Neurosis's upbringing and stuff like that. But something that I always found interesting, about the, moment in which you guys were, clearly, touring incessantly, 300 plus days of the year and, essentially existing in the music business, even though, you guys always had a pretty strong distaste from it, from what I can gather. But once you guys kind of decided to get off that proverbial hamster wheel, and viewing it through the lens of the preservation of the band, Because, you know, most people, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is they usually describe the experience of playing in a band as like, oh, well, we'll just see how far this can go. But you guys realized that you couldn't go any further. Like, you would break up and obviously not create music as the collective unit of, you know, what you were doing. You know, but I presume you can kind of see how easy it is that people can get caught up in that. But I guess the question that's embarked in all of this is like, what helped you get off and like have that idea of, we need to preserve the band, so we need to stop this?
Part of it, I think, goes back to our origins. The fact that we do come from the DIY punk scene meant that, I mean, fundamentally from the beginning, we never expected that this was something you do for money.
Sure. Or
that it's even possible to earn a living. Like that wasn't even in the cards. I mean, our first tours weren't even in proper clubs. You know?
We're playing squats. And
squats, basements. People's parents aren't home. Like fucking, I was doing it.
Yeah, you were doing it at your house.
Yeah. You know, and you know, borrowing money to buy a van to get us a third of the way across the country before it breaks down. You have to borrow money to buy an engine, you know, that kind of stuff. And so I guess it was, the revelation was kind of knowing that there we were with, I think Times of Grace had just come out. We were on Relapse in the States, and we were on Music for Nations is that right?
I think so. In Europe. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so those were the you know, the kind of biggest machines we had promoting us up to that point. And we thought, okay, we're just going to freaking go for it, you know? And you know, by this point, most of us had kids, and Neurosis had always been family band early on. There was children early on in our thing since the beginning. But, you know, going from doing this kind of situation where you got to quit your job to go earn a few $100 a month to support a family on, you know, we weren't in tour buses or anything. We were like fixing up old airport shuttles and welding our own bunks in there and stuff, you know, and to try to make things worth touring in, and buying old U-Hauls for the gear. And we were the only band like not in a bus on that whole Ozfest thing. But
right. You were bus chasing.
And, yeah. We were like out at like 7 a.m. because it was too hot to sleep in the van. We didn't have AC, you know. Yep. So everyone's like, oh, those weirdos are like
yeah, I can imagine
doing push-ups at 7:30 in the morning in the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so it was really just kind of taking a look at the situation, like, like the way the music business seemed to work, or at least the way that we were told it was supposed to work, is you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You know, you get an advance from this thing and throw it into the machine, get an advance from this thing and throw it into the machine. And all these things you're borrowing from are the places of your future input. And so at a certain point, we realized, okay, there's like financially 5 families, and we weren't splitting money up evenly. We were doing it according to what people's needs were, trying to find what's our bottom number it takes for us to survive as a business per month. You know, okay, sure. you need that. You need the $2,000. You only need $600. Okay, you know, and we just realized that even doing things super slim, like we were, and you know, our crew was always friends, you know, doing it for super cheap, and just realized that we were just really just digging debt, even if it wasn't debt required to pay back. I mean, there was some, like, obviously, you know, we bought a new vehicle, and you know, we had a payment on that, but we were making strange ass, weird, psychedelic, heavy music, and, you know, digging these holes that I didn't see we were ever going to get out of from that.
Sure.
If we had continued. And besides that, aside from the financial aspect, we found ourselves in order to stay on the road, you can't go do a headline show at the level we were playing back then in the same city twice a year. So we were finding ourselves deciding to open for whoever was going to be out between October and December because we have to be out.
Sure.
And we found ourselves opening for situations that were less than savory. And, you look up one day and you're like, okay, it's Monday night. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, opening for a band I really don't enjoy.
What am I doing here?
Yeah, what am I doing here? When we have kids at home, we're being shitty dads, we're being shitty husbands, and ultimately we're not serving our art correctly, as you said. This is when people are put themselves, they put themselves into positions where they start making these weird intellectual ideas about compromise in order to, quote, make it, end quote. And to us, we just had the revelation that to make it is, we've already done it because we've stumbled across this extremely unique and powerful force that's bigger than us as individuals. That how many people get to make an original, emotional, powerful music like this? How lucky are we, and how horrible would it be to compromise it for money? Or to get out of debt,
Absolutely.
Or to stay on the road, or any of that stuff. And so we basically kind of froze it and ran the other direction. Let's go get jobs we enjoy. Let's go find work we like. Let's go take care of our families and make something stable and with more security so that we can still do this without compromise forever. And, and if we play our cards right, we'll have more time available in the future as we figure it all out. And, sometimes that's worked out.
Right. Yeah. I just think, like I said, the practicality of that look is something that, most people kind of regardless of age, because, by that time you guys were, ostensibly adults, even though I'm sure you felt like children, just that notion of being like, okay, we want this thing to stick around for as long as humanly possible. So that is the focal point. And we want to actually have this holistic life rather than, putting out a seventh record about, what touring is like on the road. It's like, that's
not to mention the terror of we're one broken arm away from like going and asking for a job at Guitar Center.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very, very true.
Like what, we're not building any sustainability towards any future. And this is, as these times right now also make very clear, it's extremely fragile,
Yep.
And
it can go in an instant. Yeah, for sure. And it did, and as you guys were kind of navigating the music business, you guys never had like management. I know you'd like worked with booking agents and people helping.
We did have management at that time. I think in the mid to late 90s, and they were punk rock guys coming up like us who just said, "Hey, we'll be your manager." They were our booking agents, and then they became our kind of and through that process, even though it was friends and coming from the right place initially, we got in situations where things got weird, and
it's tough.
Realized that you just, what, and I will counsel friends these days. Everybody's different, but I think there's a band of our size or smaller, even of what we ended up. I think we even got more popular as we toured less. But even to where we are now, playing the venues we can play now, if you can at all balance a checkbook, and you're independent, you're not out there in the major label world where you have to have somebody fight for you. If you're dealing with the right people and working at, we have our own record label.
Yeah, right.
And even the people many of the people we did deal with, weren't complete ripoffs, and so there was some going on, but probably unintentional. But if I don't know. I just don't feel like there's any reason to have management until you get into the industry itself. And we didn't want to be a part of the industry itself.
Yeah, you guys always kept it at arm's length.
Yeah.
And so,
that was as close as we got, was that like late 90s time where we were multiple labels on different sides of the ocean. And, and then obviously we ran away from that in multiple manners.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A few last things I want to hit on before I let you go. One of them, being your publishing your first collection of poetry and lyrics. To me, seems more vulnerable than even playing in a band. I'm going to guess that it felt different, but then also maybe similar of kind of putting together a record. Or am I completely wrong in that statement?
It is similar in a way. I mean, and like where we started, right? Like shy kid, don't want to be called on, whatever, music has forced me to, and other situations in my teaching career and everything, has forced me to confront what is uncomfortable for the greater good of the art or the greater good of my students or whatever it is. And so, but there's always a little bit, I mean, if you don't pick up huge vibes of contemplating self-doubt from all of our music, then you're kind of missing a big chunk of it, because it's always dealt with, and in my personal stuff and the group stuff, is what is it like to be a thinking, feeling, emotional human being in this bizarre world? What are the existential questions of our purpose here? What's our connection to nature, to each other, to ourselves, to our own minds, to our own bodies? And when doing, art that takes on those types of questions, I think it's probably pretty natural to never think it's good enough, to never think that it's going to be deep or heavy enough, or emotional enough, or pure enough. And that brings up some pretty heavy kind of imposter syndrome feelings sometimes, like, who the hell am I to think that I'm worthy of putting out an album of pretty piano-based songs with strings and
sure,
where do
I get off?
Where do I get off on that? Yeah, like who am I kidding?
Right.
And that happened like tenfold when I was like having the internal debate of putting the poetry out there. Like poetry is something I've written my entire adult life, and it's basically just always lived and died in my own journals. And mostly used as lyric fodder, like time to write lyrics, time to chop lines and words and phrases out of old shit. Because I need something that has a long A sound I can hold on in about 8 syllables,
Sure.
And so like lyrics have always been kind of a collage. Either it's kind of listening to what words you hear suggested in the music, but a lot of times those end up being sounds, and you got to turn those sounds into words. And so sometimes looking at personal word banks and phrase banks helps you pull the words out. Like, okay, that's what it's saying. And you hammer it into some form that, while poetically it may be a collage of 6 different periods of life or philosophical wonderings or thought trains, but it turns into something new. And these poems, when I was kind of a self-challenge of what if I just sat and I wrote these things that weren't going to be reduced to lyric fodder, and then I would just let them live on their own. And who knows, maybe when I've written a few in this new notebook as opposed to all the old notebooks, which are now over here, So I got this new notebook, this new pen, and maybe with these I will sit and just commit each piece until it's done. And I don't know, maybe I'll go to Kinko's and make a little chapbook or something, and
sure,
give them to friends or sell some on the internet or whatever. And that idea snowballed after I came up with 23 poems I liked, and then I thought, okay, maybe it's that same part of me that like rises up against that self-doubt. It's still there. It's there to this day, but that same self-doubt never stopped me from taking my first band's demo tape recorded in high school to the skate shops and to the record shops and to the head shops, and, nervously asking the shop owner, hey, can I sell my demo tape here? Would you guys let me leave some here and you can just pay me if they sell? And the same thing that's like, hey, me and my friends, we made this fanzine. We got interviews with local bands and international bands, and, can we sell this here? And so, I run Neurosis Recordings here out of this barn where my studio is too. It's like right over there, 15 feet away. And that's an extension of that same thing. Like, I want to be a part of the underground music community. And part of that is you just do it yourself, Mm-hmm. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm throwing poetry out there now. And how can I make it worthwhile? How can I give people an in? Because let's to be honest, when, in our kind of scene, the words, I'm releasing a poetry book, kind of choke in the throat before they even come out, and you want to laugh at yourself. It's so ridiculous sounding, like, first of all, how many of our peers actually read or enjoy poetry? Maybe more than we think,
Sure.
To me, it's not weird, but so I thought, okay, if I tie it in with all my solo lyrics, it'll give at least the people that like my solo records an in point,
Mm-hmm.
and
sure.
Make it a nice, tangible product, a hardcover thing, and also to make something a hardcover, you need to print enough to be able to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, you'd have to sell the thing for $50, So, okay, if I can get my number high enough of where I think I might be able to get rid of them, I could afford to do that, and got beautiful illustrations to kind of jump in there, and then as I was kind of researching what it would take to make them, I was discussing with a friend of mine, Duncan Barlow, who's been in lots of hardcore bands back in the day.
Yeah, By the Grace of God, Endpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, Guilt.
Yep.
And he is a creative writing professor at University of South Dakota. He's run his own independent publishing house with independent distribution. Now it's actually tied to the University of South Dakota. And as I was just picking his brain about, where do you print books? I've printed 1 million record covers, and distributed
Totally.
a lot of records, but where do you print books? Where's the best place? Where can I distribute these? And in that conversation, at one point after sharing it with him, he's like, why don't I just publish it? And as much as it was weird to give kind of a little bit of it away from the DIY thing, it again, kind of like those early professors in high school, it validated what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're working with a person, similar to what you were talking about earlier in regards to like management and stuff like that. You're working with a person that has the same sensibilities. This is a person who, has come from the same DIY scene. So like they get it. It's a different story if someone, was like from Simon & Schuster being like, hey, Steve, I think we could do this. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about, dude?
Man, I wish I owned a car.
Why?
Day trips on the weekend, seeing the fam, hitting up the vintage markets, last-minute errands.
Oh, you don't need to own a car for that.
What you mean?
You don't need to own a car to have one.
Okay.
Yeah, just check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone. It's super affordable. Gas and maintenance are included in your membership, and you only pay for the time you drive. Nothing else.
Wait, really?
Yep, and you can book by the hour or day.
Bet it costs more in the long run, though.
Nah, members actually save about $700 a month compared to car owners.
$700 a month? Wait, so this isn't your car?
Nope. I use the Zipcar app to book one for a few hours or a weekend. It's super convenient.
Join instantly at zipcar.com and book a car near you in minutes. That's zipcar.com. Zipcar. Have a car without owning one in the city.
There's never been a better time for football fans to join the huddle with BetMGM. Sign up today and place a $10 pregame wager on any pro football team to win. If any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game, you'll win $200 in free bets regardless of your wager's outcome. Just use bonus code JERSEY200 when you make your first bet. Get on the field and find out why nothing beats a win with the king of sportsbooks. Download the app or go to betmgm.com and use bonus code Jersey200 to win $200 in free bets if any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Check out the podcast Good Assassins, the unbelievable but true story of the greatest spy of World War II. Season 1 was a top 10 hit with millions of listeners, making it one of the top 20 new podcasts of the year. In Season 2, a mysterious agent is strategically dismantling the Nazis' violent grasp on France. They don't know her name, but they want this woman dead. Not only is she leading her own resistance factions, but inspiring others. The Gestapo sends a devious double agent to hunt down the limping lady before she threatens their entire push for Western Europe. But Virginia Hall was tougher and more resilient than anyone expected. I'm Stephen Talty, an author and a journalist, and from Diversion Audio, this is the dramatic story of a different kind of spy. Listen to Good Assassins on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, Barnes & Noble bargain counter.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. But it's exciting because the process of what you were doing is very similar to, how people, like you were talking about earlier, putting out records and just being like, well, hey, where do you do that thing? Like, is this actually, tangible enough for me to be able to do this on my own? And once you kind of unlock that, you're like, oh yeah, like I can do this, whether or not, it flies off the shelves is, a different story. That's not my problem. But I mean, it is your problem, but but you get the point.
Yeah. The invoice is my problem.
Yeah.
It's partially Duncan's problem. So
that's true. Split it.
Exactly. And so, and we made a really kind of unique and unique arrangement, which most people wouldn't be able to make because they don't come from our background. Where I was like, hey, you might only be able to move so many through your traditional book channels, and that's understandable because I have no, reputation there, and who knows, but I know I can move a lot through, or not a lot, but I feel confident that I can move a certain number of people who would buy it along with my record, and
absolutely.
And so we kind of came up with this collaborative way of him putting it out on his press, but me being able to kind of micromanage the input, and it was neat because it's unorthodox, and that comes from, I think, our punk rock sensibilities of unorthodox ways of just finding a way to make it work.
Yep, absolutely. No, it's a beautiful thing. Two last things, and then I promise I'll let you go.
No
clearly,
worries, man. No worries.
I appreciate that. Clearly the band and, everything that you have done has always been rooted in the DIY principles like we were talking about. At certain points, and you've seen many other people that, have kind of come up with you and played in bands and are peers of yours that, tend to become disconnected with either the music or a lot of those DIY principles. You are not one of them. What, I guess, kind of keeps you connected to that? Is it just because you literally know no other way to operate? Or is it just the feeling of that is still, what you're kind of focused on?
I think it's the ethics.
Sure.
I still 100% buy into those ethics. I listen to people like Ian MacKaye or Steve Albini talk about the absurdity of how they see the music industry. And we've seen it from the inside, man. You don't go on Ozfest or go open for Pantera and don't see that weird shit.
Sure.
Yep.
No, totally.
And it is nothing as depressing as like, maybe it's fun for those people on the top, or all the people that work with them. But if you're like low to mid-level band in the freaking metal scene or like, it's just sad, it's like really gross.
Yeah, totally.
And so it's like, one, we saw it and we're disgusted. We had conversations, after we had moved from Alternative Tentacles to Relapse, which was already kind of a compromise because we didn't see ourselves as a metal band and still don't. But as we got weirder and weirder, we realized, we don't fit in anywhere anyway, so let's go where we're wanted. Just watching, there was first of all, the kind of like when, after Nirvana got signed and all the major labels started sniffing around everywhere, there was some of that happening around us a couple of years later, and we had meetings. Thank God none of them actually took us up on our crazy things. We were like, okay, if we're going to sell out, it's got to be like balls out. Like,
Right. No, I literally, I worked at Century Media Records for about, 7 or 8 years, and I was A&R, and it was one of those things where it's like, there are certain bands that I just would straight up never talk to because I'm like, oh yeah, they're not interested in this mechanism. So I can't even imagine what guys that were working at major labels coming at you with. Like, I just can't even imagine the conversation.
They literally use terms out of movies. Like, we'll give you enough rope to hang yourself.
You're like, what is that? What does that mean?
Lots of sports team references, like just all that stuff where you're just like vomiting in your hands behind your back. Like, oh my God, and
right.
And we were playing with it in kind of a weird way. We're like, hey, what if we told them the idea that we only way we would do this is if they also financed our ability to make like a film like Pink Floyd The Wall and to publish a book and a magazine and
right,
and all, like really take multimedia to another level, like
right.
And all that stuff, and they probably just like got in their car,
like,
left, and like, yeah.
You're like, why did we meet these dudes at this random Chinese vegetarian place? Like, okay,
yeah. Oh, you were there, yeah.
So yeah, I could see it's like
Actually, I think we had Long Life Veggie House delivered, but
Oh, there you go. Yeah. And I just love the fact that you guys could control that sort of, narrative in regards to, because usually the whole wine and dine experience is like, oh, let's go to this rad steakhouse. And like, you guys being who you are, it's just like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to make this guy feel really, just a guy or girl, really feel uncomfortable and meet us on our level, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, we were young and impressionable. And if somebody might have offered the right thing, we may have jumped, and that would have been a mistake. So I'm glad.
Sure.
I'm glad that none of that actually did work out that way.
Right. Well, to your point, though, I think it's one of those things where it's like, this is a random comparison, but that band Anti-Flag, who, rooted in, punk and, very, anti-capitalist, but like they signed to a major label, but like in their record in their record contract, they had all of these provisions in regards to like not only the sort of, business mechanics of getting their master rights back and all this other stuff, but the actual record label had to donate a portion of the proceeds to, all of these like radical left-wing movements that they never would have done before. And so it would have been interesting to see if you guys had something like that, where, like you said, you're financing all of these multimedia projects from Neurosis for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, we just lost $1 million on these guys. What the hell were we doing?
Yeah, well, they weren't that dumb after all. So, but and some bands are built to survive that. Like I think about the Melvins, and they have such a unique. They were able to do that and survive it because they never bought into anybody's shit about anything ever. Even in the independent underground DIY scene, they would do it their own way, and they were always the black sheep wherever they were. So. I think they just laughed all the way to a down payment on a house, probably with their signing. They didn't go do anything crazy or stupid. They, and now they still to this day they get in a van and they pound the pavement. They play every city they can possibly get to, and pump out records all the time because that's what they love doing. And that's
on their own terms.
Absolutely, and it's super inspiring, and I love that so much. And so. I'd like to hope that we've done our thing our own way on our own terms, which is a different version of that. Like slow it down, make it more intentional, protect the art at all costs.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I totally get that. And the last thing I want to hit on was the, your role as a school teacher, like, when you moved to, Idaho and, threw yourself into, elementary school teaching, the pursuit of something that you're passionate about, like, I see this cross line that happens with, many people that are involved in independent music follow the route of teaching, because it mimics a lot of the same sort of feelings of sharing things that you're passionate about and, sharing education, and all of that is kind of, encompassed obviously in the profession of teaching. Was that something that was always kind of in the back of your head? Like, it would be cool to be a teacher one day, or was that something that kind of, just revealed itself?
Sort of. Yeah. Not really classroom elementary teacher, but when I was doing the kind of self-reflection of, okay, if we're not doing this touring band thing full time, what am I doing? And, sure. Part of my brain went, I would love to work with kids, because they're not assholes yet. And, in my dream vision, it was probably some sort of outdoor survival science camp in the redwoods or something, which those things exist. And my friend John works in one of those kind of Walden School, I think is what it's called. And we went to college together and lots of shows as well. And he got into that same way, I think, just inspired. But at the same time, I was a new father, and I thought, okay, I want to find a career that's going to give me lots of free time to still be a musician and artist. I'd like to find a career that I'm inspired with, that I'm not going to dread going to. And so when I thought, okay, maybe I want to work with kids, I thought, well, maybe I should mess with teaching, because I thought, okay, if I could be a male teacher in the primary grades, I could pretty much go wherever I want to go, because that's a rare thing. So if I could be kind of a well-respected teacher in early elementary, I would have a lot more doors open to me. And, teaching's only 180-something days a year. That's a lot of time to make music and run a record label,
Sure.
Well, it's never enough. It's actually
right.
way too many hats. But supportive of that, and so I just finished teaching my 20th year of elementary school. I also thought it might make me a better father, like learning to deal compassionately and
patience.
Yes. Never thought that was one of my strong suits.
No, that's. I appreciate you vocalizing that fact, because I think it is, it is a struggle for, I have a 9-year-old, and I think that notion of patience, you have to flex it in ways that you never even were prepared for before you had a child. And so you applying yourself from your professional perspective to be like, hey, maybe this can flex this muscle a little bit more to where I can bring it home and it'll benefit.
Yeah. Patience and like super chill and calm are also not adjectives I would have used as self-descriptors.
Sure. Sure.
So, it kind of fell into place where the second I kind of looked into it, I subbed a little bit. I volunteered in a couple of reading programs where I'd go work, and I saw some creative people doing some interesting things, and I kind of enjoyed it. I didn't know about the whole I had a 4-year degree in sociology. Like, I didn't have an education degree, but luckily at that time in California, there was laws in kindergarten through 3rd grade that you could only have 20 students in a class. It was 20-1.
Yep.
And so areas on the other side of the poverty line, or in neighborhoods with varying issues, they were struggling to keep enough teachers interested in elementary school in rough neighborhoods.
Sure, and you could get your emergency credential.
Right. So I joined up this. If you had a 4-year degree, as long as it was a 4-year college degree, it could be in anything. You had a college degree in anything, you can be put in a classroom, you'll be given a mentor teacher, and you take your education classes for 2 years at night and during summers. So I jumped right in, and it was supernatural. Like I don't think we realize the amount of armor and societal bullshit we put on to be out in the adult world. You know, obviously not with your friends and your bros and your your loved ones, but there's a certain amount of I don't know, hard outer shell you have to put out there in the world, you know, to go exist in it. And you do not with kids, because first of all, they don't see it.
Totally.
They see right through it. And,
right.
And so really, you know, you can be 100% yourself, and they love it and respect it. You know, people look at me on the street or whatever, and the thing, and it's a tattooed, bearded guy, and you know,
right,
looking,
exactly.
like thinking like, oh, like scary or whatever. And these kids know I'm not scary by any stretch of the imagination. You know,
right?
You know, I'm on their team,
right?
And
well, they look at you, and they can ask those questions that most, you know, in most societal constructs would not be, you know, cool to ask or okay to ask. They'll be like, you know, hey, Mr. Von Till, why are you bald? Why do you have this long beard or whatever? Like, and you could just explain it, and they're like, okay, cool, we're friends.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, it just turned out that it was really natural to me. I really enjoy it. I learn, super cliche, but I learn from them, and they teach me a lot about myself. I'm good at delivering curriculum. I'm also good at delivering curriculum in a way that I can relate to, both ethically and, you know, feel like I'm giving them information that's useful, you know? And I use a lot of the DIY punk rock stuff. Like, okay, like we sing folk songs, and now we record them. Now they sound pretty good. Now I'm going to bring in some recording stuff. We're going to record it. Okay. Now we're burning discs. Now we've got to design a cover. Okay. You guys get to work, you know, and then we'll vote on the best cover. And then we're burning CDs, printing, and now we're still screening t-shirts because we need t-shirts. And, so, you know, hopefully maybe some punk rock bands have started.
Right. I think I'm going to go to your class just because it would be really fun to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, all these experiences that I've done for years, to be able to be like, wait, I can do this in 4th grade too? Wow, this is incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, and just being world traveled and bringing that experience into the classroom for rural Idaho kids, you know, who have a pretty some kids, you know, if their families are well-to-do or whatever, have had some travel, but a lot of them, you know, maybe their parents take them to Seattle on a wild hair, or the Oregon coast, or maybe Las Vegas is where their family goes on vacation.
Right. Yeah. A lot of cultural touchstones in there.
Yeah. And and so, you know, to bring my experience of different cultures, of different peoples, of different languages, different art and music, like anytime there's a chance to go off on a tangent, you know, anything that's hinted to in books we're reading, we take it and we follow it, and we go down all the rabbit holes for fun, because that's how you learn, you know? And so because of that, there's probably more students that have in Idaho that have considered the indigenous perspective of what it was like when European Americans first crossed the country, and what it was like for those that were already here, and to have those conversations and to even role play it. Or there's probably quite a few more kids in North Idaho who know what Mongolian Tuvan throat singing is.
Yeah, dude.
Because it was mentioned in a book, you know.
Yeah,
like
you're
Mongolia.
Like, let's talk about this for 20 minutes.
Yeah, like, okay, hey, check it out. Speaking of Mongolia, listen to this. And you know, just any experiences like that. Like, hey, Mr. Von Till, where were you last week? You know, I had to take some days off work. I went to Japan. You know, and here's some photos, and here's some money, you know, from a different place. And And here's some of the things I saw. And so to be able to share that with young people and think it's also a way to like use those DIY punk rock ethics I grew up with of don't wait for other people to hand you a life. That's not how it works. We didn't wait around for somebody to discover us. We went out and just did it.
Right.
We booked our own tours.
Toiled in obscurity.
Right. And that's how it is in any job or career or whatever. You want to be a great furniture maker or bread baker here in the local farmers markets. You just go do it. You go work on your craft, and then you just throw it to the wind and take it out. And so to bring a little bit of that, a little bit of the kind of like my early young kind of activism stuff to it by being able to reframe discussions about history and society and in ways that are not pushing any sort of agenda, but just getting kids to think critically,
Right. Offering up a perspective. Because I think that's ultimately what is, I personally, and I know many, many people that have been impacted by independent music, that is what it offered to us. It offered us a different perspective, like having this idea of, oh, wow, like, maybe my, upper middle class, white suburb upbringing is different than, like you were talking about earlier, different socioeconomic backgrounds and all this other stuff. It's like, oh, the world is much larger than that. And I think, you being able to offer up those perspectives is incredibly foundational, because it could set a kid off to be like, oh, yes, like it's not just my world. It's all of this other stuff that lives in it as well.
I would hope so. And another, it just kind of reminded me of like, so I got these DIY ethics, this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, this critical thinking. And then there's also just the social service of, I feel so extremely fortunate to have had the privileged life that I've been able to live, and not that it didn't take hard work, but I had a lot of people reach out and help along the way, whether it was labels offering to put out our records or booking agents willing to help us not play only bedrooms across the country and different things like, and those teachers that were supportive. I heard a statement when I first was thinking about, it was when I was volunteering for that reading program on the peninsula. This guy said something, and the fact he used, actually, I fact-checked it recently. It turned out to not be 100% true, but it stuck in my brain. And I'm still sure that there is a correlation. But basically, the statement was that since the prison industry has been privatized, one of the facts that industry uses to figure out what their growth will need to be is how many kids are not reading at grade level by a certain age. Like I think the specific fact I heard was, whatever percentage of kids aren't reading at grade level by the end of third grade, that's how many prison cells they might need in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the specific fact, like I said, turned out to not be true, but I would be shocked if there wasn't a correlation between kids headed towards a life of imprisonment and not being able to function at grade level, expectation by a certain age. And so part of that was, man, I can teach kids to read. I know I can do that. Like I need some, need some pointers on how to do that in the beginning. But that makes sense to me. And so if doing something simple, and we often poo-poo education, and it's part of the man, and it's part of the setup, and that is true. It is definitely part of the
structure.
Yeah, part of the structure, and so I would hope that I would be a different voice within that structure, and that so if I can have any sort of positive impact of even just by teaching the standard curriculum well, that give a kid a shot, who maybe has a lot of cards against them in life from whatever they come from or whatever, just some kid a shot to not end up on that road towards being incarcerated or being part of the system in that way. That's the ass end of the system right there. Then it would all be worth it. If I could know that maybe one kid avoided prison because of something that they might have gotten in school.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole notion of, unintended consequences, where it's like you putting out art, you putting out, social service, like you don't know the impact that has on people. In the same way that, a dude coming up to you, giving you the Metallica record, like he does, he doesn't think about that, but it's immeasurable. When you, that whole, whatever, a butterfly beats its wings on one side of the world, I think when people such as yourself express that notion, I think it's frankly, it's beautiful, because that's the connectivity of a person putting thought into it, of being like, oh yes, like I can't put my finger on, these 10 people that I've impacted, but I know in some capacity by me putting it out there, it probably will have an impact.
Yeah. And just from my own experience, I would think it would have to, from exactly like you said, like the guy with the freaking Metallica record, like, what, like, right. Would I be sitting here right now in this place, in this time, discussing with you these things, had not that happened? I mean, it's the time machine paradox. You change one little thing and it's an entirely different reality.
Right. And then you're marrying your mother, like in Back to the Future.
Which I just had the misfortune of revisiting recently with my youngest daughter, who just graduated high school.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's
number one is okay. Number 2 sucks.
Number 2's rough. It's real rough.
So we decided to not go to number 3 after number 2.
See, number 3 is kind of the most family friendly in my opinion, just because it's so like, whatever, Old West rambunctious, like action adventure stuff. But yeah, 2 is like the darkest timeline, and it's not enjoyable. Except the hoverboard scene. That's pretty cool. But Steve, thank you so much for hanging out. Honestly, really appreciate it. I just feel indebted to you in many different respects. But thank you for being such a cool dude and opening yourself up.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. And thanks for the thoughtful conversation. Much appreciated. And putting good stuff out there in the universe.
What a doozy of a human being, right? I just, in reflecting, if you told me even like a year or two ago, they're like, hey, Steve Von Till is going to come onto your podcast, I'd be like, I don't know, man. That seems kind of weird. I don't know why you'd want to do that. But just an incredible human being. And thank you very much to Steve. Thank you very much to Bailey, his publicist, for setting this up. It was funny because I actually told her at one point, I'm like, yo, I'm straight up nervous about this. Like, is he cool? Do you think he'll enjoy this? Because ultimately, I don't want people to come on this thing that aren't going to enjoy it. You as a listener don't deserve that, and me as the interviewer doesn't deserve that either. So Steve was just so incredibly gracious, and I love him for that. So next week, we're trugging right along. Trugging? Is that even a word? Trucking right along. We have Tom Schlatter from You and I, The Assistant, and most recently, Every Scar Has a Story. I ran across him many, many years ago, and we've been friends, but have fallen out of touch for, 10 plus years. But when we reconnected on the podcast, it was like no time had passed, and it was really, really cool. So that's what we got next week. And again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you from the bottom of my stomach, my soul, wherever, the bottom of something. I really, really do appreciate all your support. So until next week, please be safe, everybody.
I wish I owned a car. It'd make weekend day trips, seeing the fam, and last-minute errands so much easier.
You don't need to own a car for that.
Really?
Check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone 24/7. It's super affordable because you only pay for the time you need, plus gas and maintenance are included.
Yeah, but bet it costs more in the long run.
Nope. Members save hundreds a month compared to car owners.
Okay, I'm checking them out.
Use the Zipcar app to book a car near you in minutes for a few hours or a weekend. Join instantly at zipcar.com. Zipcar. You don't need to own a car to have one.
What's the worst thing about sports? That's right, all those unnecessary breaks in play, but you can make them all better by using Grubhub. Grubhub has every food you can possibly crave, from national favorites to local spots. Grab your first order from the Grubhub app or visit Grubhub.com. That's Grubhub.com. And now Amazon Prime members get a year of Grubhub Plus for free. That's 0 food delivery fees from your favorite restaurants. Visit goforgrubhub.com/Amazon for terms and details. Go for Grubhub.
Introducing The Biz Tape, your all things music, business, and media podcast.
Join me, Joe Wozleski, and my co-host,
Colin McKay, every Wednesday,
where we discuss the breaking news changing the music industry
and what your favorite artists and creatives are up to.
Listen to new episodes of The Biz Tape every Wednesday on the Nashville Podcast Network, available on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.